Things you would never bring up in therapy, you could bring up here.
How do I know if I'm staying in a relationship out of fear?
When we make it about someone else instead of ourselves, we usually have more courage. So if you're in a relationship where you feel nothing and that nothing that you feel is unfixable, and you're in it just because you're afraid, instead of thinking about you, think about the other person and what kind of love they deserve, right? That may give you the courage to be honest. Because if you only think about yourself, you're just going to amplify the fear, and that fear is going to be what prevents you from facing truth. You know, I always think about when I'm in a relationship, if I'm not working on the relationship and I have checked out, I tell myself that I'm taking someone hostage, you know? It's not fair to the other person. And if you care about the other person, then you might then have the courage to really look at this thing honestly and decide whether you want to work on it or let the other person go so they could find a love that they deserve.
How important is physical attraction to your romantic partner?
The short answer is yes, because if you're not attracted to your partner, then if you're not attracted to your partner in that kind of way, then what are you? I mean, you're friends, roommates, business partners, you know? And unfortunately, because of life, because of raising kids, because of just the way that it works out over time, we fade, disconnect, and yeah, um, we end up not being attracted to our partners, right? And we end up staying a lot of the times because it makes sense or because we're afraid to be alone. And then we're in this relationship where we're just kind of roommates. I feel like my parents were like that. You know, I feel like if my parents spoke the language and had the ability to um, create their own lives, they probably wouldn't have been together, you know? Um, they slept in separate rooms, and I've never seen them romantic. I've never seen them kiss. I've never seen them hold hands. I've never seen them show affection. And growing up in a house like that, it made me very sad. Also, what did it teach me? You know, what does it teach the kids? Anyway, yes, attraction is important, but one way to look at attraction, I think, is cumulatively, because attraction ebbs and flows, right? There's going to be times you feel disconnected to your partner, and there's going to be times that you feel super connected and very attracted. That's just how life is. Attraction isn't a constant, you know? And so I would step back and look at it kind of cumulatively. And then also, if you check in with your partner, if you talk about things other than the bills and the logistics, there is a journey to attraction, you know? And I think a lot of people think that attraction is just like turning on a light switch or turning a light switch off. And it's not. I think there's an ebb and flow. I think attraction is its own living, breathing thing. And we have to work on it, invest in it, and it fluctuates. But I think what's important is that there's effort. Um, this idea that attraction is just there or not, I think, is false. I think initially, of course, there has to be a chemical traction. There has to be values, things like, you know, that line up, alignment, however you define traction, right? Sexual energy, however you define attraction, that has to initially be there, but it doesn't stand and live on its own. You have to feed it.
How do I let go of someone when I know they're not right for me?
So we all have different parts of ourselves, right? And there's a part of you that knows that this is not healthy for you or you don't want to be in this. And this is probably the wiser part of you that wants to protect yourself and knows what's good for you. And then there's another part of you, and this is probably the younger part of you, that feels like you can't live without this person, you know? And it's not about discarding or shaming that part of you. It's about the older self telling the younger self, that no, you can live without this person, and you don't need to be with someone else to have a meaningful life, you know? And the younger part of you is saying this probably because of your story, probably because there's been abandonment or wounds or things that have happened in the past where your nervous system was rocked, trust was broken. And so the work is for your older, wiser self to acknowledge, not discard that part of you that thinks you can't live without this person. Listen to that person, and then also tell that person, tell that part of you that you got this, you can take care of that part of you. And it may be hard, but you don't need anyone to live. You choose to be with someone else, but all you need is yourself, right? Tell that part of you that you've got this. That part of you will be taken care of.
What's your opinion on the cab light theory?
The idea originates from an episode of Sex in the City where Miranda says something like, men are like cabs. When they're available, their light goes on. They wake up one day and decide they're ready to settle down. And the next woman they pick up, boom, that's the person that they marry, right? So, in other words, the theory suggests that for some people, especially men in this case, it's less about who you're with and more about when you decide you're ready. Because once you decide you're ready, whoever's in front of you, that's the one you marry. That is the cab light theory. Basically, that it's less about who you choose and more about timing. Given my orientation toward relationships as co-creation, dynamic and growth oriented, I'd frame the taxi cab theory like this. The quote unquote light is one factor, readiness, but readiness alone doesn't guarantee a strong relationship, right? What matters after the light goes on, mutual vision, shared authenticity, ability to co-create a future, communication, shared values, mutual pleasure. Like, that's the stuff that really matters. For your work, to your question, I don't think it's a gender thing. I think many people, when they feel like they are ready, put more weight on who's available. And by putting more weight on who's available and the ticking clock, they tend to loosen up on their non-negotiables, right? They tend to, as many people say, settle because of the urgency that they put upon themselves. So that is real. That happens. And I think it's important that we are aware of that. And yes, we can tell the universe that we are ready for something, whether that is a relationship or children or a new book or whatever. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you are now chasing something and exchanging your truth or what is healthy because you feel that what has fallen in front of you has an expiration or if there's a ticking clock. So I would be aware of that and know just because you're ready, it doesn't mean that the universe is going to deliver who you're supposed to be with.
Can you explain what swim past the breakers means in relationships?
The breakers are when two people collide, decide to love each other after the honeymoon, after the sparks, after the excitement of exploring new stories and bodies. The breakers, when you start to see the contrast, the dirty socks on the floor. But deeper than that, the activation of each other, right? The traumas and the different attachment styles, and all of that. So when I say swim past the breakers, I'm not saying ignore that until it goes away. I'm saying we have to work through that. Learning how to repair ruptures, because we all fight differently. All of that are breakers. And what I mean by breakers are, in the ocean, if you pass the breakers where the wave breaks, the ocean's actually really calm, and I think most people, we don't pass the breakers. That difference, that activation, that contrast, that inability to work through our own stuff, or maybe the refusal to work through our own shit, gets us to quit at love. And so swimming past the breakers is where you're going to find the corrective love experience. Swimming past the breakers is where you're going to find trust, sustainability, and ultimately a deeper love.
How do I keep a strong spark with someone who isn't my partner?
First, get curious, ask yourself where this spark is coming from. Is a spark happening because you're getting something from this person that you're not getting in your relationship with your partner? Is there a spark because there's drift in this relationship and so you're fantasizing and projecting on someone else? Is it a spark because there's a chemical dynamic that you used to be attracted to based on wiring and trauma bonds and something that smells familiar from childhood that you know is unhealthy? Or is it just a spark because we're human and we find people attractive who are not the people we choose to love? And that's just truth. It doesn't mean you're going to cheat on your partner. So I think the way to not carry it is to not judge yourself or make you feel like you're doing something wrong because you find someone attractive. I think it's just radical acceptance and honesty and curiosity, right? You find someone attractive. Okay, where's that coming from? A lot of times when you kind of explore where it's coming from, the attraction fades because you discover it's actually not a pure form of attraction, but there's a lot of fantasy or a lot of distortion. You know what I'm saying? So, or if it is a genuine spark because you find someone charming, funny, sexy, hot, that's okay too. Doesn't mean you're going to do anything about it. It doesn't mean you have to tell your partner. So if you don't want to carry it, just explore it, accept it, and surrender to it. Just notice. Just be curious. Just notice.
Can a situationship actually work if we communicate well and set boundaries?
A situationship is a relationship that exists somewhere between friendship and commitment, emotionally involved, maybe even physically intimate, but without clear boundaries, direction, right? And so it's when two people act like they're together, they text every day, they share moments, maybe even meet family members, but they avoid actually calling it a relationship. It's connection without commitment. It's comfort without clarity. So in therapy terms, it often lives in the gray where attachment and avoidance dance, right? One or both people get the emotional hits without the closeness of vulnerability. It's almost like being with someone just to be with that person, but not really truly being with that person, if that makes sense, right? And the lack of structure can create anxiety, confusion, and unmet needs. Basically, in short, a situationship is a relationship without the accountability of one. So your question is kind of, it doesn't make sense because you can't be in a situationship and have clear boundaries and communication, because by definition, the situationship means that there isn't clarity, right? So anyway, throw away the word situationship and create something that is honest to you with clear communication and boundaries, because you deserve that. And make sure you let the person know where you're at, what you need, or else it will default to something abstract and be another situation.
Is it possible to heal while starting a new relationship?
This is a great question, and I actually believe that relationships can be the most powerful way, one of the most powerful ways actually to heal in relationships. And they don't have to be romantic. They can be friendships. They could be relationship with your family, but it's in showing up to a relationship differently, getting something from that space that is healing, that is corrective. And by doing so, there's healing, right? Of course, there's also healing work we can do alone, but I don't think there's anything more powerful than healing in a relationship, because the dynamic of a relationship can be corrected. If you're used to toxic, if you're used to unsafe, it's not about just reading books. It's about giving yourself another experience and conditioning your body to know what safe feels like, right? And letting that be the new norm. And so that's how relationships can be very powerful. And it's also why you really have to be picky on who you choose so you can give yourself that corrective healing experience.
How do I know if I'm making the right or wrong decision in my life?
I'm allergic to right or wrong. Whenever I'm making decisions, I try to stay away from what is right, what is wrong. Now, I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, if you're going to, punch a stranger in the face for no reason, I would say that's wrong. But here's the thing. If you ask yourself, is it honest to me? And if punching a stranger in the face is honest to you, then the behavior may be wrong, but that is your truth. And hopefully it's something you want to investigate where that's coming from, right? And so I like this idea. Is something honest to you? Is it not honest to you? And explore why and what that means, because if you label something as right or wrong, and then later on down the line, you look back, you're going to have regrets, right? Because most of us don't make quote unquote right decisions all the time, especially when it comes to dating, love, relationships. So if you say, was it honest to me? Then it's so much easier to let go of later on, knowing that all you can do is make decisions that felt honest to you at the time, And so anyway, stay away from, is it right? Is it wrong? Instead, ask yourself, is it honest or not honest with where you're at right now in your life? And if it is honest, but the behavior or the decision is leading to destructive, unhealthy behavior, then the fact that that was honest to you means it's a sign to explore what's going on, right? Because that pattern will happen again and again. So is this honest to you or not honest to you? And if it's unhealthy, explore why.